Welcome to the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast, powered by StatRoute.com. And now, here's your host, Ryan Skullroot.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullroot. We've got a pretty fun show for you today. We are getting into kind of reviewing what has happened so far in the preseason. Since we usually do these, we've been doing these shows on Saturdays for the last few weeks. We're obviously missing out on the 3 games that are tonight. So for those of you who actually hear this, whether on the audio version on iTunes and Stitcher and all those places, you won't be able to get our thoughts and notes on those. However, most of the other games, with all the other games that have been played, we'll try to give you just kind of a few tidbits on things to take note of for fantasy this season. We'll go over to the news and notes, go over some guys that we think that their stock is obviously rising. Whether we think it's necessary or not for their stock to rise, we will be talking about that, and then we'll call it a show. To start off, we want to make sure you guys, if you are listening on audio, make sure to hit the subscribe button, whether on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. No matter where you're listening to our podcast, we would really appreciate that. Also, please leave a rating and review of our podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, please also subscribe there. And we'd love to get your guys' comments and feedback on there as well. Two more announcements. Our draft guide is for sale. Just a reminder, you can go to SkullKingFootball.com, go to the store tab, and I believe those first 2 options, first 2 products there are the options for our fantasy draft guide, whether you just order the PDF for $10 that has player comparisons, like Diggs versus Thielen, Juju versus Antonio Brown, although that's becoming a little less of a controversy anymore. Let's see, what's Alvin Kamara versus Christian McCaffrey. Other sleepers and things like that in there, rankings, all sorts of fun stuff in those. So that's in the PDF, and then in our web version, we have all that. You can actually get a download of the PDF. Plus, as part of that, you also get there are some extra articles that we've added to the web version. Plus, I am going through this next week and adjusting all of my ADP analysis for 10-team, 12-team, and 14-team snake drafts. So that is also part of our draft guide. So make sure you hop on there again. Go to the SkullKingFootball.com, hit the store tab, and from there you can dig into to find our draft guide for purchase. Real quick, I wanted to put out a little bit of a rant. I've been doing these a little more often lately, trying not to play I'm one of those guys that like to play the peacemaker, and so today I'm in a way doing that at the same time telling everyone to just pipe down. So here's my rant. This last week I posted a couple articles, shared them around Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and some of the feedback that I got on them, they're on draft strategies, and there are some guys that subscribe to specific draft strategies, whether it's a 0 running back strategy or a 0 wide receiver strategy. Some people strictly go on value-based drafting. It doesn't matter what position is there, who's the best value. And I have no problem with any of those strategies. The point of me putting out these articles was to give people ideas on possibly different ways to draft. The different theories that are out there. Just to put the information out there and let people use them as they will. The ridiculous comments that I have had on some of these, well, that's a stupid way to draft. This never works. This doesn't work. Why would anyone want to do that? Can everyone just chill out, please? There is no one way to draft a fantasy team. If you have your own preferred way, awesome. Do the stats and the research point that there might be a less risky way to go about drafting your team? Well, of course. And the stats can say lots of different things. Depending on the league and depending on what stats you look at, it very well could say that 0 RB is the way to go. It could say that 0 wide receiver is the way to go. It depends on scoring. It depends on, how, draft position. All these things can take an effect on what type of strategy you use for your drafting. All of these draft strategies can work. It's all about personal preference. So instead of everyone saying, well, that's a stupid way to draft, don't do it that way sucks, how about you do it your way and let everyone else do it their way? If they prefer to do it another way and are having fun playing fantasy football, well, then that's all that really freaking matters. So everyone just chill out with, oh, don't do it that way sucks. Just calm down. Say, you know what? You do you, I'll do me, because the way I'm drafting isn't going to affect you. And the way you draft in a league that I'm not associated with doesn't affect me. Let's just leave it alone and move on. All right? So there's my rant. Let's go ahead and move on to some headlines.
Today's headlines.
All right, and today's headlines are brought to you by the Sleeper app. Make sure to go to the show notes that will be on our various channels when we distribute this out. Make sure to go to the show notes. There will be a link to click for Sleeper. If you are not part of Sleeper yet, it is the website that we use for all of our breaking news, for our news in the podcast. Just phenomenal updates. If you got notifications, I'm getting notifications all through the day. They're excellent at keeping up with Twitter and everything and getting those notifications bam, 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 bam when they're coming in. So make sure to go to sleeper.com or go to the show notes here on this episode, and there will be a link to click to join Sleeper and become part of their community. We also have a channel on Sleeper where you can get a lot of our breaking news, links to articles, podcasts, and announcements for us. So, all right, so let's get into it. To start off, let's deal with this. Let's deal with the headache that is Antonio Brown. Gosh. So first it's his feet. Wears the wrong footwear into a cryogenic machine, and frost bites the bottom of his feet. Now he is threatening to retire if he's not allowed to wear his helmet from when he was with the Steelers. I think someone actually said he painted over it in some semi-semblance of Raiders silver and black in order to be able to wear the helmet in practice, and someone caught him and wouldn't let him wear it. The NFL is being very strict about the concussion protocols and player safety. And so honestly, I almost just wish the guy would retire at this point. Just get it done with. I mean, the guy's a phenomenal talent. He is a phenomenal talent. But these are the kind of things that push people down draft boards that just you don't want to deal with this on your fantasy team. And so this is one thing I'm not drafting Antonio Brown this year. I already, with his draft stock where it was, I was already down on Antonio Brown because of the fact that he was moving from Ben Roethlisberger to Derek Carr. Besides that, you look at last year, he had, I believe it was career lows, or really close to career lows, in yards per attempt and yards per route run. And basically what carried him to a phenomenal season was a career high in touchdowns with 15. Now he's going to the Oakland Raiders and Derek Carr, who Derek Carr has led the league in quotation marks, in the least amount of yards per attempt for a couple of years, or at least been in the bottom third for a few years now. So not exactly a great position for Antonio Brown to go to. So I'm down on Antonio Brown, and this is making him pretty much undraftable for me. Moving on next, the Colts feel confident that Luck will be ready for Week 1. There was something else on here. I must have already gone past it. So yeah, they're confident that he'll be ready for Week 1. They're taking it very, very easy with this calf muscle. I'm not worried yet. We're still only in the first week of preseason. Even if he gets a few snaps in the fourth week of preseason, if he can get a few snaps in the fourth week of preseason, I'm fine. I have no problems drafting Andrew Luck. And again, these are reasons why you draft after week 3 of the preseason or just before the first week of the regular season. So that you're not you finally get the final verdict on a lot of these injury situations. Browns wide receiver Antonio Callaway is being suspended 4 games for a violation of the NFL substance abuse policy. Antonio Callaway, there were some people that thought that he might be a bit of a breakout candidate this year. I wasn't so sure with the fact that they had Odell Beckham Jr. come over. They have Jarvis Landry. They have David Njoku. They've got Nick Chubb who can catch the ball out of the backfield. There wasn't a whole lot there. And let me see. I think I've got it here. Yeah. And if you look at what was happening in the game this weekend with trying to find where's the box score for that one. All right, I'll find it later. Just with how everything was going, wasn't really involved. I like what the Cleveland Browns are doing. And so I don't think that Antonio Callaway was going to be all that fantasy relevant. If you had him in Dynasty, maybe hold on to him for now. But I don't think this is going to be a big hit to fantasy rosters. Damian Williams, the truthers are being mocked, I guess you could say, with the fact that Andy Reid has come out to say that they are probably running a running back by committee with him and Carlos Hyde. They also have Darrell Williams. Let's see, who is it? Is it Darwin? Is also. I mean, they've got so many running backs, so they're possibly looking at a running back by committee. Everyone's really high with this. Everyone that is not a Damian Williams truther is all the way over on the side of Carlos Hyde is taking this role over. Well, Carlos Hyde doesn't do a very good job of catching the ball in the backfield. He has had 3 teams pass him up in the last 2 years. 3 teams in the last 18 months give up on him, from the 49ers to the Cleveland Browns, who traded him off, to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who didn't re-sign him or released him. So I'm not high on Carlos Hyde. Could he surprise me? Yes. It's just that's not a way I'm willing to go unless the draft price is really, really good. But yeah, so that's just something to watch for. Andy Reid's not exactly a guy who does a lot of running back by committee. Same thing with they've been talking about James Conner and Jalen Samuels and Benny Snell up in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin doesn't usually run a running back by committee. So something to watch for. The Chiefs did a little bit of a committee approach when it was Spencer Ware and Charkandrick West for about half a season, 3/4 of a season. But that's the only time I really remember Andy Reid doing a lot of running back by committee. So, Daniel Jones, according to Pat Shurmur, head coach of the New York Giants, basically said, slow your roll on a quarterback controversy. Daniel Jones performed very, very well on his opening drive, or his one drive in the preseason game. I believe it was 5 for 5, threw for 50 or 60 yards and a touchdown. Very, very impressive. He didn't have to go to second reads. He kept, seeing the first read, it was open and hitting it. So we'll see kind of as he gets a little more time in this next game. I'm guessing he's probably going to be getting a little more playing time. So we'll see kind of how he does when there's a little more pressure on him, finding his second and third reads when necessary. But overall, a very good opening performance. It doesn't push him up my draft boards any. I don't think he's fantasy relevant for redraft, which is the main thing that we cover here at SkullKing, but it's definitely something that to keep an eye on. Kiki Kuti was carted off the field in the pregame or in the preseason game. I believe it was last night. As of this point, it's not considered to be a major injury. If Kuti is forced to miss time, which last year he missed a lot of time in his rookie season, played 3 or 4 games, then went out again. This could be a good sign for Duke Johnson, who was just traded to the Houston Texans, because Johnson can play in the slot. He also, obviously can catch the ball in the backfield. I want to say in his first 3 years, he was the leading running back receiver in the National Football League in terms of receptions for the first 3 years of his career, until CMC kind of took over that role last year and the year before. So something to look at for Duke Johnson with the Kuti injury. So I think this brings up Duke Johnson. Since he's been traded out of Cleveland, his ADP has gone from low round 14 in 12-team drafts to about mid to early round 12 in 12-team drafts. So something to watch, kind of how and how he gets involved with the offense in Houston. Jerick McKinnon is still not really getting over the hump in terms of his injury. Cannot be put back on the PUP list, so it's possible he could be put on injured reserve with the designation to come back. With that, I think this helps Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida. I think that Breida is really the guy, the running back to go to, and I think that Tevin Coleman will be more the receiving back, which was always the role that he had best in Kyle Shanahan's offense when they were in Atlanta together. Freeman could catch the ball out of the backfield, but Tevin Coleman was used more in that capacity. And so while I was not big on this running backfield to start, now that we're getting a little more clarity with injuries and such, this helps me kind of rework some of my thoughts. And right now, just because of Jerick McKinnon, I am leaning towards Tevin Coleman in PPR. Again, he's the running back. He's in the 8th round right now in 12-team drafts. So decent value, especially for those guys that try the 0 RB route and pick up guys later. He is one of those kind of targets. So as far as Alvin Kamara is concerned, Sean Payton has said that they're expecting a similar role for him coming into this next year without Mark Ingram. Instead, they've got Latavius Murray, a guy that I want everyone to keep an eye on in New Orleans. Undrafted rookie Devine Ozigbo. He was not a combine invitee, was not drafted. The guy is a stud and can run the ball up the middle. He runs angry. Definitely a guy to watch, especially with Latavius Murray having some injury issues in the past, especially when he was with the Raiders. Something to watch for. In the game was, I believe it was last night when they were playing. Just looking at the box score, Ozigbo had a decent game. Let's see, he finished with, there it was, three carries for 20 yards, so averaging, just under 7 yards a carry. He can catch the ball. Let's see, where's the receiving? Ozigbo. He had 1 catch for 9 yards. So, I mean, while that wasn't stellar, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, other than Taysom Hill, who went 6 for 45 rushing, he had the best average yards. Latavius Murray, 3 for 14. So definitely a guy that I'm keeping an eye on who can make the team, and if something happens to Latavius Murray, could move right into that Mark Ingram type role. Now, getting back to Alvin Kamara. Kamara, when Mark Ingram was out, was the guy. They didn't have anyone. Everyone thought it was going to be Boston Scott would kind of get that Mark Ingram role for 4 games while Ingram was out with his suspension. Instead, they went all Kamara that first 4 games, and Kamara just lit it up. Saying that they expect a similar role for Alvin Kamara this year, I don't know how to take that, to be completely honest. I think that Kamara may get a little bump in production this year, may get a little more work. Could that mean he breaks down a little bit more because he's not the biggest guy? Yeah, possibly. But if you have one of those first 4 picks and Kamara's there, and you're kind of deciding, okay, do I take Kamara here? Do I take CMC? Honestly, all these guys, the first 3, Kamara, CMC, and Saquon, all 3, 1A, 1A1, 1A2, or 1A1, 1A2, 1A3. They're all great. Is Zeke dealing with the holdout thing? That's kind of pushed him down my board a little bit. But on 3, any of the 3 of them are going to be great. And so I think that Kamara could get a bump, and he could be one of those guys that fights for number 1 overall running back by the end of the season. And one last piece of news: the Donte Moncrief right now is the front runner for the wide receiver 2 position with Pittsburgh. I think he can be very productive in that as long as he stays healthy and stays on the field. He is a guy that in 9 games, at one point in 9 to 12 games, I think it was 9 games with Andrew Luck, had 7 touchdowns. He is a end zone, red zone magnet. Decent size. I want to say 6'2", about 215, 220. So good size. Uses his body well when he is healthy in the red zone, and could be one of those guys that could have a very decent year. Right now, I want to say that his ADP is still in like the 10th round. Let me see. Donte Moncrief, yeah, he's 10.5 in half-point PPR. So he's going 5th pick in the 10th round in half-point PPR, 12-team drafts. So definitely a value there for those looking for late-round wide receivers. All right, so now we're going to get into a little bit of the hype that's been happening from this first week of preseason games, and the guys the guys that are getting hype, but not necessarily the guys that I think deserve the hype. Let's put it that way. So, all right, first off, Jacoby Myers. This is a guy that we covered in our NFL draft segments. In March and April, I interviewed Gary Hahn, the radio voice of the North Carolina State Wolfpack. Did some film study on Jacoby Myers, and he is not a speed demon, but he has good size, and he is a precise route runner. A former quarterback in New England. What do you know? A former quarterback who now plays wide receiver, like Julian Edelman. He knows how to run his routes, position his body. He knows as a former quarterback where he should be in his routes. So he's very athletic. Again, he is not a burner. Everyone talks about people who talk about breakout age. I'm a bit of a skeptic on breakout age and using that as a determining factor in drafting. Just so you know. I think you're getting a little bit too into nitty-gritty that may be more unnecessary statistics is where I would go from there. So, but Jacoby Myers, 6 catches, 60-plus yards, and 2 touchdowns last night. Has been used as basically the main target for Tom Brady in practices with Julian Edelman out. He is a guy to watch for what he can possibly be doing. In season, he is a possible sleeper candidate, and a guy that I am definitely keeping an eye on, that we've had our eye on. He's more of a dynasty pickup right now, but in terms of redraft, he's one of those guys that keep an eye on and wait for later in the year. More big hype. If you follow Yahoo Noise, being the one and only Brad Evans on Twitter, or follow him as Team Huevos on Instagram, he is very bullish on David Montgomery. We are actually bullish on David Montgomery ourselves. Some of the comparisons of him and Kareem Hunt, I see them as similar in terms of their playing ability on the field, and just the role that he has in that offense with Matt Nagy as his coach, who was Kareem Hunt's offensive coordinator, Hunt's first year in the league. And just the way they used him in the first night, I mean, in the first game of the season, or the first preseason game, he was used a lot, even in just his little bit of work. Let me pull up the box score real quick. Finished with 3 carries for 16 yards, so about 5 yards per carry. Had a touchdown. And then also receiving, let me see, pull that up. David Montgomery, 3 catches for 30 yards. And that's in like a quarter. He is going to be well used. He is one of those guys that, because he's not Jordan Howard, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and so he will be used on third down. Unlike Jordan Howard. So I think that David Montgomery has a shot to have a really, really solid season this year. Another guy whose stock is up is Nick Chubb. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they traded out Duke Johnson. But Nick Chubb really had 2 plays. He had a carry for 12 yards and a catch for 10 to 12 yards in the one series that he played. Guy's going to be a stud. For those, for a lot of people were like, does this move him into the first round of fantasy drafts? Yes, for me, he actually should have been in the first round of fantasy drafts anyways. I have him, I believe, as my running back 6 or 7, because I'm not afraid of Kareem Hunt in week 10. Maybe close to week 13, 14, but not in week 10. So another guy who's getting a lot of hype right now, Devin Singletary. For Buffalo, let me pull up the box score from the Buffalo game. From Buffalo and Indianapolis, Devin Singletary used 9 carries for 27 yards. That offensive line isn't great, so he had a little trouble, really finding many holes. Had to create some yards on his own. And then in terms of receiving, 3 catches for 21 yards. So yeah, he's another guy that we'll kind of see how this works out with LaShawn McCoy, and I believe he's already ahead of TJ Yeldon on the depth chart. And then they've also got Frank Gore, and how things are going to go there. Definitely something to watch for, but he is a guy that, let me see, Devin Singletary right now is going 11th, beginning of the 11th round of 12-team half-point PPR drafts. Even, was it 2 weeks ago, he was going at the end of the 11th round, so he has moved up around just in the last 2 weeks. So, again, a guy to keep an eye on and see how far he comes up on draft boards. So, a few more guys I wanted to talk about. The Atlanta backup running backs. Tevin Coleman is no longer there. And the guys that you do have there, Ito Smith is being outperformed right now in the backfield of Atlanta. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up that game. There we go. So, I mean, in rushing, Ito Smith, 4 carries for 7 yards. Look at the 2 guys that I have my sights on. Brian Hill, who came out of Wyoming a couple years ago, was a beast of a running back at Wyoming. He's more of a fullback type runner, kind of just running right up the middle. Sort of an Ito Smith type, just he's playing better than Ito Smith. And Kadri Olison, both those guys had 8 carries. Hill only was 8 carries for 23 yards and a touchdown. Olison was 8 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. Both of them can catch the ball out of the backfield in terms of Olison and Hill. So guys to keep an eye on, especially considering Freeman's injury past and injury history. So those are guys to watch. I think could be very fantasy relevant. I think both of them are basically undrafted right now. Everyone expects Ito Smith to be the guy, and he's being outperformed. So that's something to watch for as we continue through the offseason or through the preseason. Adam Humphries, the guy that stuck out to me, in one series with Marcus Mariota, had 5 targets, 4 receptions for 24 yards. He was the safety blanket. So, again, that's more of a late round PPR type of thing to watch for, to try to find value late for wide receivers. That may not continue, but that's something to watch for. I'm not saying you have to have Adam Humphries. I'm saying watch to see how that chemistry with Marcus Mariota continues. Another one, Dexter Williams. For those of you who are hesitant on the fragility of Aaron Jones, considering that he has had 3 meniscus issues in 2 years, missed 6 games, seeing what Dexter Williams was able to do and the opportunities given him, 14 carries for 62 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, had a long of 14. Again, I understand that this is a preseason and he wasn't going up against 1s or 2s, but encouraging to see that they gave him that much work to see what he could do. I am not a believer in Jamal Williams. I think that Aaron Jones is the better back of those two, so I think that Dexter Williams could take over that backup role, and if Aaron Jones goes out, Williams could very well find himself in a very good role in that offense, in a very good Packers offense. Or very talented Packers offense. We'll kind of see what LaFleur does with it this year with Aaron Rodgers. And the last thing I wanted to mention was getting back to, or actually from this same game, the Houston running backs. Again, with Houston releasing Donta Foreman, they pulled in Duke Johnson, who obviously didn't get any playing time because he just got into town. But guys to look at, Karan Higdon, undrafted out of Michigan, 8 carries, 37 yards. Demaria Crockett, 6 carries for 24 yards and a touchdown. Both these guys went undrafted. Guys that we covered in the preseason, in the NFL draft season, that we thought, if given the opportunity, could do something. Lamar Miller has had some injury issues as well and hasn't been the best at getting in the end zone. He's right around that 1,000-yard guy, close to 1,000 yards, total on the season, maybe a little bit over with reception yards, but doesn't always get into the end zone. So just kind of seeing where they go with the running backs there and with Duke Johnson. Again, guys to keep an eye on as we're working through preseason, as you're trying to find, who could be that sleeper pick this year or a guy that could come out of the woodwork. Again, just trying to throw out some ideas for you on guys to keep an eye on. Obviously, there's 3 more games. I believe it's 3 more games tonight. The players or the teams that have not played yet. Cincinnati and Kansas City are going tonight. The Rams and the Raiders tonight, and Dallas and San Francisco. So again, keep an eye just on guys that are playing well. Take into account whether they're playing against the 2s or 3s and just kind of what they're doing. Look more for, don't necessarily look at totals of what they're doing, but more of kind of how are they running? Are they running with energy? Is it offensive line issues because it's, they're the 3rd and 4th string offensive linemen that are blocking for them? Try to keep an eye on things like that. Collect some notes and just kind of get a lay of the land and keep observing through preseason. So, all right, well, that is all we have for today. I want to thank you guys for listening to the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. And again, for those of you who are watching on the Facebook Live feed that we had going today, make sure, again, please hit the subscribe button, whether you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, CastBox, Spotify. We're in a lot of places. So, again, make sure you hit subscribe. Leave us a rating and review, and on YouTube. Thank you again for everything, guys, and we will talk to you later. Hey, SkullKing Nation. Thank you for listening to the SkullKing Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.